Welcome to the Dark Mysteries podcast, where we tell dark and mysterious stories. If you like the dark and mysterious, hit that like and subscribe button to help support the channel. Today, we're doing a deep dive into one of aviation's most persistent puzzles, the strange case of D.B. Cooper.
Yeah, it's a legendary one. We've sifted through a ton of material, FBI files, investigation reports, analyses of what happened up there.
Right, and our mission here is to walk you through it all. The hijacking itself, the hunt for Cooper, the clues they found, and, why we're still talking about it decades later.
Because it really is unsolved. And some of the details, when you dig into the sources, are pretty surprising.
Okay, let's set the scene. It's Thanksgiving Eve, November 24th, 1971, Portland International Airport. A guy walks up to the Northwest Orient Airlines counter.
Just before a short hop, Flight 305 to Seattle. The sources say he used cash, bought a one-way ticket.
Under the name Dan Cooper.
That's the name he gave, yeah. Witnesses described him as, pretty average-looking, mid-40s maybe, wearing the business suit, a dark raincoat.
Carried a briefcase. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary as he got on the Boeing 727, took seat 18E, right at the back.
He even ordered a drink before takeoff. Bourbon and 7-Up, the records show. Seemed totally calm.
Until they were in the air. That's when things changed dramatically. He passed a note to one of the flight attendants, Florence Schaffner.
And the note, it was polite almost, but chilling. Something like, "Miss, I have a bomb in my briefcase and want you to sit by me," all printed neatly.
So she sits down, obviously trying to stay calm, and he opens the briefcase, just a crack.
Yeah, just enough for her to see inside. She described seeing red cylinders, wires, a battery. Looked like a bomb to her, absolutely.
And the FBI later thought maybe they were flares, but couldn't be sure.
Exactly. At the time, she had no reason to doubt him. It looked real enough.
So threat established, what did he want?
His demands were clear. $200,000 cash, which you have to remember back then was a huge amount, about $1.6 million in today's money.
Wow, okay. And not just money, right?
No, he also wanted 4 parachutes, specifically 2 main chutes and 2 reserve chutes.
Why 4? Did investigators think he planned to take a hostage?
That was one theory, yeah. Make them think twice about giving him faulty equipment if someone else might be jumping too. Or maybe just confusion.
And he wanted the stuff delivered when they landed in Seattle.
Right. Then he'd let the passengers go. So the message goes to the cockpit. Another flight attendant, Tina Mucklau, becomes the main go-between.
And the plane just circles for, 2 hours?
Roughly 2 hours, yeah, circling Puget Sound, while the FBI and police scrambled to get the money and the parachutes together on the ground.
How was Cooper acting during all this? Was he agitated?
According to Mucklau's statements in the source materials, not at all. He was calm, polite even. She described him as rather nice, not cruel or nasty. Offered her a cigarette.
That's bizarre. Did he seem to know the area?
He did drop a couple of hints, pointed out Tacoma down below, mentioned McChord Air Force Base, where the chutes were coming from, wasn't far from the airport. Suggests some familiarity, right?
Yeah, definitely. And did he say why he was doing it?
Mucklau asked him that. He said it wasn't anything against Northwest specifically. He just said, it's just because I have a grudge, and that this flight worked for his plan. Very cryptic.
Okay, so they land in Seattle. Money and parachutes are brought aboard. Passengers get off, safe. But Cooper's not done?
Not even close. This was just phase 1.
Yeah.
He keeps the flight crew, including Mucklau, and gives new instructions. Southeast towards Mexico City.
But flying really slow and low.
Yeah, minimum speed, about 100 knots, maximum 10,000 feet altitude, landing gear down, flaps at 15 degrees, and crucially, cabin unpressurized.
Those flight parameters sound like they're tailor-made for jumping out of a plane.
That's exactly what investigators concluded. Slow speed, low altitude, unpressurized cabin, it makes a parachute jump survivable, or at least more survivable.
The crew pointed out they couldn't make Mexico City like that.
Right, not enough fuel flying that inefficiently. So they agreed on a refueling stop. Reno, Nevada.
And then his most audacious demand, about the back stairs.
Yeah, he wanted them to take off with the rear air stair down. The airline strongly objected. It was dangerous, but he insisted. Eventually they compromised. He'd lower it himself once they were airborne.
Mucklau stayed with the crew for this second flight. She was the last one to actually see him face to face.
Her account's pretty intense. She said she bugged him to take the bomb off the plane. He was non-committal. Then she saw him fiddling with the money bag. Looked like he was tying it around his waist.
And then she went into the cockpit.
Yes, leaving Cooper alone in the main cabin.
So they take off from Seattle, and Very quickly, a warning light comes on in the cockpit.
Just about 4 or 5 minutes after takeoff, the light indicating the aft staircase had been lowered, just as he planned.
Did they try to talk to him?
The pilots used the intercom, asked if he needed anything, if he needed help. His last word back was just, no.
And then, around 8:13 p.m., the crew felt something physical.
Yeah, their ears popped because of the pressure change from the open door, and they felt the tail of the plane suddenly pitch upwards.
Which tests later showed could happen
If a heavyweight, like a person with 20 pounds of money and a parachute, was suddenly pushed off the back stairs, it fits.
So they continue flying towards Reno, but they don't actually know if he's gone.
No idea. They stayed locked in the cockpit for safety. McLeod tried the intercom again, multiple times. Just silence from the back.
Until they land in Reno, stare is still down.
Plane lands around 11:02 p.m. FBI swarms it immediately.
And he's gone, vanished.
Just like that. Starting one of the biggest, longest manhunts the FBI ever conducted. Enter Jack, they call the case file.
So what did they find left behind on that empty plane?
Okay, evidence-wise, they lifted 66 latent fingerprints. But frustratingly, none matched anyone in the databases. None led to Cooper.
Anything else?
Yes, his clip-on tie was there.
Yeah.
A black JCPenney tie, his tie clip too. And 2 of the 4 parachutes.
Just 2. He took 2 with him.
Apparently. He took 1 main and 1 reserve chute, left 1 of each behind.
Okay, so based on where they thought he might have jumped, where did the FBI start looking?
The initial search zone was pretty rugged terrain in southwestern Washington state, south of Mount St. Helens, near Lake Merwin, the Lewis River area. Clark and Cowlitz counties.
And it was a massive search, right? Boots on the ground, planes in the air.
Huge effort. Hundreds of soldiers, FBI agents, local police combing the woods, aerial searches too. They even tried some high-tech stuff for the time.
Like that spy plane.
The SR-71 Blackbird, yeah. Tried to get detailed photos, but the weather and cloud cover made it difficult. They even used a small submarine to search the bottom of Lake Merwin.
But nothing. No trace of him, the money, the parachutes.
Absolutely nothing connected to Cooper turned up in that initial phase. Found some other unrelated things, but not him.
And this is where that famous name confusion comes in.
Right. The hijacker called himself Dan Cooper. But an early news report, sources say by a reporter named James Long under deadline pressure, mistakenly called him D.B. Cooper. And that's the name that stuck forever.
Weird how history works. Why was it so hard to figure out where he jumped, though?
A nightmare calculation. The plane speed wasn't perfectly constant, the winds aloft were strong and variable, visibility was 0 pitch black, raining. And they had no clue how long he waited before opening the chute, his freefall time.
So the potential landing zone was huge.
Enormous.
Yeah.
And incredibly difficult terrain, dense forest, mountains.
But they did refine the search area later, based on new info.
Yeah, over time, looking again at the pilot's flight path data, wind reports from other pilots around that time, they shifted the probable drop zone eastward, more towards the Washougal River Valley.
Also very rugged country.
Extremely. And there's a sad connection there, too. The lead FBI agent for a long time, Ralph Himmelsbach, thought Washougal was the spot. But
Mount St. Helens.
yeah, the massive eruption in 1980 happened very close to that revised search area. The FBI generally believes that if any clues were still out there, the eruption likely buried or destroyed them.
Okay, let's circle back to the evidence on the plane. That clip-on tie became really important, didn't it?
Hugely important. They identified a JCPenney brand, probably made in the mid to late 60s. They even got a partial DNA profile off it years later, like 2007.
But could it match it to Cooper?
No, and they couldn't be certain whose DNA it was anyway. Could have belonged to someone who made the tie or handled it before Cooper. But the particles found on the tie, that's where it gets fascinating.
What kind of particles?
Using electron microscopes, they found tiny traces of rare elements and alloys. Pure titanium, strontium sulfide, aluminum, bismuth, antimony, some specific titanium-antimony alloys, even weird stuff like lycopodium spores.
What does all that mean? Titanium sounds high-tech.
It was,
Right?
especially back then. Pure titanium wasn't common. It suggested he might have worked in specific industries. Maybe aircraft manufacturing Boeing was right nearby, using titanium.
Or chemical plants, metal fabrication.
Potentially. Or even making cathode ray tubes, old TV screens. There were companies like Tektronix in the Portland area doing that kind of work, using some of these materials.
So the tie wasn't just a tie, it was like a tiny industrial resume.
It kind of pointed investigators toward a certain type of background, yeah. Someone connected to advanced manufacturing or chemical processing, possibly in the Pacific Northwest.
What about other physical evidence? Hair, cigarettes.
They found a couple of hairs, but one was destroyed in testing and the other got lost over the years, unfortunately. And he left 8 cigarette butts, Raleigh filter tips. But those were also destroyed before modern DNA testing became routine. Big missed opportunities, looking back.
Okay, now the money. Nothing for 9 years, then suddenly a kid finds them.
Incredible story. 1980. An 8-year-old boy, Brian Ingram, is digging in the sand on the bank of the Columbia River near Vancouver, Washington, a spot called Tina Bar.
And he finds
3 bundles of cash. Rotting, partly disintegrated, but bundled. Totaled $5,800.
And the FBI confirmed it was Cooper's money.
Yep. They matched the serial numbers. It was part of the ransom. Big breakthrough, you'd think.
But it just raised more questions, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. The location, Tina Bar, wasn't really in the projected flight path or jump zone. How did he get there? Did it float downriver for 9 years?
But the condition was weird for that theory. The rubber bands were still mostly intact.
Exactly. And some bills were missing from one packet, but the packets themselves were still together. Plus, geological studies of the sand at Tina Bar suggested that specific deposit of sand only got there after a river dredging operation in 1974.
So the money couldn't have washed ashore right after the hijacking in 71.
Doesn't seem like it. It suggests the money arrived there much later.
And there was even more recent science on this. Diatoms.
Right. In 2020, researchers looked at microscopic algae, diatoms, found on the bills. Their analysis indicated the money probably entered the water in the spring, not late November when Cooper jumped.
So maybe it wasn't in the river the whole time, or got there later, or entered the water somewhere else months after the jump.
It's another layer of mystery. That $8,800 is the only piece of the ransom ever found, the only evidence recovered outside the plane. But how and when it got to Tina Bar? Still debated. Ingram and the airline's insurer eventually split the money found, though the FBI kept some bills.
Let's talk parachutes again. What kind were they?
Standard emergency bailout rigs. Military style, basically. Designed to open fast, but not really steerable. Meant for getting out of a failing plane, not a precision jump.
And he left 2 behind. 1 main, 1 reserve. The reserve was open and had cut lines.
Yeah, strange detail. Why cut the lines? No one knows. But the other reserve chute, the one he took, that's key.
It was a dummy.
It was a non-functional trainee chute. The canopy was sewn shut, completely unusable for an actual jump, and that dummy chute wasn't on the plane when they landed in Reno. He took it with him.
So did that mean he was inexperienced, didn't know it was fake?
That was the FBI's initial thought. An amateur wouldn't spot it. But the parachute rigger who packed him, Earl Causey, pointed out something else.
What was that?
Causey said the main harnesses Cooper had probably didn't even have the right attachment, the D-rings, to hook up a reserve chute properly anyway.
So the reserve was kind of useless to him either way?
Possibly. Causey speculated Cooper might have realized it was a dummy, or just didn't need it, and maybe cut it up or used the container itself as an extra bag. Maybe for the money. Mucklow did see him trying to stuff money into something that looked like a chute container.
Which leads to the debate. Was he skilled or just lucky or neither? The FBI changed their mind.
They went back and forth. Initially thought maybe an experienced paratrooper. Later, Agent Carr leaned towards inexperienced, saying the jump itself, night, bad weather, bad gear, was just too reckless for a pro.
But Causey, the rigger, thought someone with even a little training could make the jump.
Causey felt the physical jump wasn't that complex, maybe needing only a few practice jumps. But he agreed, doing it at night, in a storm, wearing loafers. Extremely dangerous. Likely would break legs on landing, if not worse. But survival wasn't impossible in his view.
Okay, let's talk suspects. They had sketches, right?
Yes, the first one wasn't great. Witnesses didn't think it looked much like him. But later ones, based on Mucklow and Schaffner especially, showed a man, mid-40s, maybe 5'10", olive skin, brown eyes, dark hair. No accent.
And the FBI built a profile from all this. What kind of person were they looking for?
Likely military background, maybe Air Force, either a trained paratrooper or maybe someone like an aircraft cargo loader. They get basic jump training, know about emergency chutes, know how to push things out of planes.
Familiar with the Seattle area?
Seemed likely. And intelligent. A planner. Not impulsive. Probably desperate for money. Smoked Raleigh cigarettes, about a pack a day based on the butts.
And his knowledge of the 727 was specific.
Very specific. Knowing the aft stairs could open in flight, knowing the cockpit couldn't lock them, that wasn't common knowledge. Some FBI speculation involved him possibly knowing about CIA using 727s for covert drops.
Using a bomb, not a gun, seems strategic too.
Yeah, keeps people at bay, harder to rush him from multiple directions. And he was careful, asking for the notes back, though he forgot or left. the tie.
So the biggest question, did he survive the jump? What was the FBI's official line for years?
For a long, long time, the Bureau's stance was, no, he probably didn't make it.
Yeah.
The jump conditions were just terrible. Black night, rain, wind, freezing temperatures, rough terrain below, unsuitable clothes and shoes. And the money never showing up, it seemed unlikely.
Someone thought he landed in the Columbia River.
That was one theory, yeah. Hypothermia, drowning. Agent 2 saw push that idea.
But you mentioned not everyone in the FBI bought the he died theory.
Right. There were dissenting views even early on. That anonymous quote from a senior agent saying, I think he made it, he could just walk out, shows it wasn't a closed book internally.
And then the copycats happened.
That really complicated the impossible jump narrative. In the year after Cooper, 5 other guys tried similar hijack and jump escapes.
And they survived.
All 5, according to the sources. Some in pretty bad conditions, too. That forced the FBI to reconsider the odds. Maybe survival wasn't quite as impossible as they first thought.
But still, after all this time, no body, no parachute, no conclusive proof of death ever found.
Exactly. Which keeps the door open. The FBI looked at literally over 1,000 serious suspects over 45 years.
But none panned out because the Bureau needed hard evidence.
Correct. They needed something direct, fingerprints, DNA, irrefutable proof. Circumstantial links weren't enough. You had guys like Kenneth Christensen or Richard McCoy Jr. McCoy did a copycat later but was ruled out for the Cooper jump itself. Dwayne Weber confessed, but DNA and prints didn't match.
Others had intriguing ties, like through those particles on the tie.
Yeah, Joe Lakich, William Smith, connections via the tie elements or motive, but nothing else concrete linked them to actually being on that plane.
People ruled out by DNA, like Sheridan Peterson. People named by family, like Lynn Cooper's uncle or Walter Rica, but the stories didn't quite fit the known facts or evidence.
Robert Rackstraw got a lot of press later, but the FBI had already looked at him and ruled him out way back in '79. Even Rackstraw thought it was ridiculous. William Gossett claimed things, but again, no proof.
So, lots of smoke, maybe, but never fire. The FBI's sources emphasize that lack of definitive proof for any suspect.
And that's why the case remains open in the public imagination, even if officially suspended by the FBI.
The impact of this whole thing was huge, though,
Yeah.
especially on flying.
Absolutely. That hijacking spree Cooper kicked off. It led directly to the airport security we see today. Universal passenger screening started in the U.S. in 1973 because of Cooper and the copycats.
They changed the plane itself?
Yep, they installed a device called the Cooper vane on all Boeing 727s. It's basically a wind-activated lock that prevents the aft air stair from being lowered while the plane is flying.
The FBI officially suspended active investigation in 2016, released the files.
Which just fueled more public interest. Amateur sleuths, citizen detectives, they're still digging through it all.
And it remains the only unsolved air piracy case in American history.
Just amazing. A guy plans this meticulously, pulls it off, jumps out, and vanishes, leaving just enough clues to keep us guessing.
That tie, the money at Tina Bar, it's maddeningly incomplete.
So here's the final thought for you. Based on everything we've discussed from the sources, you've got the terrible jump conditions, the lack of spent money, suggesting he didn't survive. But then you have the copycats who did survive similar jumps, and that bizarrely placed money at Tina Bar found years later.
What feels more likely? Did Cooper somehow defy the odds, survive that jump, and melt away? Or did the forest or the river claim him almost immediately, leaving just those few decaying bills as a final, ambiguous trace?
What does that Tina Bar money really mean? Is it a clue to where he landed, or maybe a deliberate piece of misdirection placed years later?
Lots to chew on there. Thank you for walking us through this incredible case.
Absolutely. It's a mystery that definitely sticks with you.
What are your theories? Let us know in the comments below. We discuss new stories weekly, so don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Leave a comment and tell us stories you think we should discuss in the future on the Dark Mysteries podcast.